All right, hello everyone, and thank you for tuning in once again to the Black Box Podcast. BBOR, Black Box Online Radio, coming to you from West Virginia. Every week on this channel, I'm hoping to have at least one question and answer session where I read off your questions and comments, and we have a little bit of a discussion. Today we're going back to the case of Andrew Gosden, a disappearance from September of 2007. At the time of this recording, it's now October of 2018, so we've just passed the 11-year anniversary of the disappearance of Andrew Gosden, but I've really noticed that this particular case is something that has really stayed with a lot of people in the true crime world. They're just like, people are very active, researching the case and contributing to discussions associated with Andrew Gosden. Now, let's go to some of the comments. Well, first I should say that I made 3 uploads on this channel previously. The first one was talking about my gut instinct with this case, where I just sort of put out that I thought the death of I shouldn't say the death. I thought the disappearance of Andrew Gosden was a suicide. I thought he left his home, to commit suicide so he would not have been disturbed. That was just my gut instinct. And it turned into an upload that I titled Andrew Gosden's Suicide Theory, which we have some comments on that one here. The first one comes to us from Duncan Bailey. Duncan writes, I too tend reluctantly toward the theory of suicide, sad as it is. The minimal items Andrew took with him, not even a coat, and the weather wasn't meant to be great in that area at the time, and his insistence on a one-way ticket that might have been his intention. Like Duncan and I, we were on the exact same page. The refusal of, buying the round-trip ticket as opposed to the one-way ticket, when it would have been, virtually no great expense at all to buy the round-trip ticket versus the one-way ticket. It wasn't an enormous amount of money in the price difference. Okay, though, since recording this upload over a year ago, I would say that the things that's really challenged the suicide narrative would be his father's own comments, just saying that Andrew wasn't very responsible when it came to packing. He wasn't good at packing a suitcase. He would never remember things like his toothbrush. I mean, the details that really stood out to me were, he has no real personal items with him, not an enormous amount of money, buying the one-way ticket. Furthermore, not even having the charger for his PlayStation Portable, which he was seen playing throughout the entirety of the time. That really just gave me the feeling that this was someone who was leaving, not trying to go anywhere, just not trying to run away and start a new life, but just leaving because they wanted to get away and unfortunately lead to some demise in the form of a suicide. But I thank Duncan for the comment. And now our next one comes to us from Gary Lee Peck. Gary Lee Peck writes, he was only very young to kill himself, that young. I'm just reading. I think someone got hold of him, evil bastards. Okay, I guess Gary Lee must mean, I think someone got hold of him, evil bastards. Now this goes to a giant issue. When discussing Andrew Gosden, a lot of the comments I got on my 3 previous uploads were all leaning toward the theories of murder. And I even did an upload called Andrew Gosden Murder Theory when I was almost just like, hey people, I'm not really seeing the enormous amount of evidence that is pointing toward a murder theory. But what do you think this is? One of the biggest things that people have brought to my attention is they think that the reason why he had minimal items with him was because he was going there to meet someone. And, he was going there to have some person that was going to provide for him, that was going to, take care of all that. And some people have actually even suggested that that person might have made an agreement to give him a ride back from London to Doncaster where he lived. But what Gary Lee Peck is trying to say is just they think that Andrew doesn't fit the profile of someone who would be likely to commit suicide. I was 14 once, and I went to high school, and I knew a lot of 14-year-olds and 15-year-olds at the time that talked about things like suicide, so I'm not convinced that I can agree with that. that, someone who is 14, so they should be ruled out from anything associated with the suicide theories. But it's like, at the same time, there it is. It's just kind of like, what really is going on, and we don't know. But let's go on to a different comment here, and this one is going to come to us from Max Alberts. Max writes, "Thank you for the information. I believe he changed his identity completely and he is still alive. It's clear he did not plan to return to his parents' home, evidenced by the fact he purchased a one-way ticket to London and left his family in the dark. He appears," and Max is just theorizing now, "that he has long dyed black hair, and I get the name Mark around him. He lives near a working fountain and is right in the heart of the city." And, Max wrote a very long comment, so I cut some things out, but Max is saying that he believes in the sort of what I refer to as the Andrew Gosden runaway theory, that Max's interpretation of this is that Andrew did these very specific actions because he was running away. The lack of personal items indicates that he was not trying to return. But once again, we have, this kind of contrast. And I would ask you, if you're listening to this now, what do you think that suggests? Do you think that suggests something more likely of someone like Andrew's actions we're talking about? Do you think that Andrew's actions suggest more of somebody that was trying to run away and start a new life? Someone who was running away so they could commit suicide without being interrupted? Or going to meet a person who was going to provide things for them? Because just because he bought the one-way ticket, we've discussed one possibility with that. He could have gone to meet somebody who had made an agreement to drive him home, or, he could have just been going to meet someone, period. I'm really kind of, undecided on all of these facts now. But once again, I did have to insist that my gut instinct was that this was a suicide. And, it's like, Max continues, though, by saying, "What puzzles me about the whole situation is that he could simply ditch his school and his straight-A average and all of his hopes for the future, or perhaps they were his parents' hopes for the future. Something major caused a radical personality shift in him." I kind of forget about that, actually. I don't quite recall hearing that Andrew was a straight-A student. I don't actually recall that anywhere, but if Max says that, there's a high chance it could be true. It's sort of like, why would he leave? I do think Max is on to something there when he says something caused a radical change in his personality. And, one of the big things that we have going on with this is they think that it could have been under the influence of someone like a predator, somebody who's trying to persuade Andrew to leave and meet him in London. And a lot of those theories revolve around, they believe that on the video, like on the CCTV footage, you can see the reflection of a person who appears to be male and appears to be waiting for Andrew. But let's move on to a different comment. This one comes to us from Paul Fitzpatrick. "He was probably groomed online, lured to London on false pretext, and murdered." Like I said, we got a lot of those. A lot of people have been going down that theory. The next comment comes to us from Peripheral Purity. Purity writes, "It's awful to think about, but I believe he died that day or shortly after. My gut instinct has always been that he was groomed, despite allegedly having limited access to the internet. I know when I was 14, I was very impressionable and easily led. In addition to this, I kept a lot of things from my family. In Andrew's case, potential email addresses and accounts, etc." So, that's some very nice commentary on that one from Purity. What this sort of suggests is, this is kind of challenging that comment that we read out in the beginning where it's just like 14 is too young for suicide. First of all, no, it is not. Secondarily, teenagers are excellent at hiding things from their parents and their family. They're good at it. It's like they don't give away some of the telltale signs of deception that I think older adults give away. But once again, there's a very large thing here where most people seem to be just giving out this gut instinct that Andrew was murdered, as opposed to something suicidal, which was my original feeling. Now, when we look at Andrew's case, I mean, I just had to say I didn't really see any enormous amount of evidence that supported this as a murder, because, it's not like we have a note or something that was left there with someone else's handwriting. It's not like we have, even some email that was recovered from a computer that had any sort of, illusory language and, something that seemed a little cryptic. We don't have any of that. All we really have is Andrew on the train buying the one-way ticket, not intending to return. So, to me, that was leaning down, the suicide theory and also the runaway theory. I mean, if he valued his PlayStation Portable so much, and was playing the entire duration of the train, well, I was about to say he wouldn't have forgot the charger. No, I mean, I've forgotten my cell phone charger, so I have to retract that. I've forgotten my stuff, too, so... And I'm sure you have as well. We can't really read too much into things like that. That could just be the representative of a 14-year-old who, wasn't very attentive when it came to organizing his stuff. I wasn't at age 14, and I'm not any better at all in my 30s, let's say that much. So, one of the things, though, that I notice about a lot of true crime cases is a lot of these things, and I mean theories, really point to somebody passing away on the day that they disappeared. And I think a lot of the strongest theories that, people have is that someone met their demise on the day they disappeared. Like, if this was indeed a murder, then he would have passed away on the day he disappeared. And, I really have those feelings about cases like Brandon Lawson or cases like Tara Calico and possibly even Maura Murray, that they sort of met an untimely death on the day they disappeared, or at the very least shortly after. Because it really just explains the disappearance and why no traces of them ever surfaced. But with Andrew Gosden, I do notice a few differences in the cases of Brandon Lawson and Maura Murray. We've had alleged sightings of Andrew all over England, if I'm not mistaken. I mean, there have been a variety of potential sightings. And we have this comment from Max, which his theory is that Andrew is still alive. And he's using, some of his own ideas as to what Andrew would look like. But that is just, Max's gut feeling. So it's like, I'd say, though, that this case, if any, has a greater possibility that Andrew was still alive, because I mentioned some other cases, Tara Calico, Brandon Lawson, Maura Murray, all of those involved accidents, especially, things like crashing a car or running out of gas even, or maybe getting your bicycle got hit by someone else's car. But it's like, this case doesn't have any of that. The Andrew Gosden mystery doesn't have any major accident going on. This is just somebody who took a train ride with a one-way ticket, no return ticket, and he didn't come back. And what I said in my Andrew Gosden murder theory upload was, I just did not see the evidence that he actually met anyone. I just did not see the evidence that he went there specifically to be with a different person. I mean, is it possible that somebody kind of groomed him for this and he was lured there on a false pretense? Yes, of course those things are possible. But where is the evidence? That's all I can repeat again. Where is the evidence that this was a murder as opposed to either a runaway or a suicide? I'll just have to ask that question very openly to the audience, but thank you to everybody who has left a comment, and please just keep leaving comments. It's good to, keep discussing things. I welcome all of that. Any comments that are constructive and want to actually explore ideas, please just drop them below, or you can also hit the like button and subscribe if you like any of the things I've talked about on this channel. But thank you so much. Until next time.